Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're jumping into a really cool, kind of mind-bending literary genre. It doesn't just tell stories about the past, it actually makes you question what history even is. So, let me just start by throwing a big question at you. Is history a solid, objective fact, just the way things were? Or is it maybe just the version of the story that the winners got to write down? This one question is really the key to everything we're talking about today. And this slide right here really gets to the heart of the problem. Think about it. What we call official history is awesome at recording the big stuff, right? The laws that were passed, the battles that were fought, the dates everyone has to memorize. But what gets left out? Well, these huge gaps, the actual human experience of it all, the trauma, the emotion, the stories that were just silenced. All right, so to really understand how a novel can go up against history, we first have to get a handle on what we even mean by that official story, the one we all pretty much learn in school. So traditionally, history tends to focus on what we can call the center. These are the stories of the people with all the power, the kings, the presidents, the generals. It's all about the big events that shaped their world. And what you end up with, naturally, is this very dominant top-down version of the past. But what about literally everyone else? Well, in the second half of the 20th century, a whole new kind of novel started popping up to challenge that official story, and it gave us a completely different way to think about the past. And here it is. The term, which was coined by the literary theorist Linda Hutcheon, is historiographic metafiction. Now I know, it's a mouthful, but the concept itself is brilliant. It's basically a name for novels that are super well researched and set in the real past, but at the same time, they're constantly reminding you that they are, in fact, stories. Let's just break it down, because it's really just two ideas smashed together. Historiographic, that just means it's all about the writing of history. It uses real people, real places, real events. Then you've got metafiction, and that's the part where the story knows it's a story. It winks at you, the reader, and reminds you that what you're reading is a construction, not some perfect photograph of reality. And this gets to the genre's big, provocative question. It really makes us ask, if both history writers and fiction writers have to pick and choose details, shape them into a narrative, and tell it all from a certain point of view, then how different are they really? So, how does this actually work inside a novel? Well, one of its most important jobs is to completely flip the script on who gets to be the hero of the story. Instead of focusing on that center, the kings and generals we were just talking about, historiographic metafiction shines a spotlight on the eccentric. That's just a way of saying it's about the people on the margins, the folks on the outside looking in, whose lives and experiences were never seen as important enough for the official history books. Let's take one of the most powerful examples out there, Toni Morrison's Beloved. In the actual historical records, the main character, Seth, who was based on a real person, by the way, is basically reduced to a single cold line in a newspaper clipping. She's just a criminal. That's it. But Morrison's novel does the complete opposite. It basically ignores those cold, simple facts from the report. Instead, it builds an entire universe around Seth's inner life. Her memories, her trauma, her love. It tells a story that official history could never, ever capture. And this leads us to another really radical idea that's baked into this genre. Because if you change the person telling the story, you also change the story's truth. So here's the crucial point. These novels completely throw out the idea that there's one single, objective, capital T truth. Instead, they argue that truth is subjective. It totally depends on who you are, where you're standing, and what you've been through. Just look at that central event in Beloved. From the school teacher's perspective, who is the voice of white authority, what Seth did was a loss of property. Period. But from Seth's perspective, it was a terrible, tragic act of a mother's ultimate love designed to save her child from a fate she believed was worse than death. The novel never tells you who's right. It forces you, the reader, to sit with both of these conflicting truths at the same time. Okay, so this is way more than just a clever literary trick. This way of telling stories has real-world power. It has a deeply political purpose. And this is where historiographic metafiction becomes a real political tool. For one, it lets authors fill in those huge, silent gaps in our history, like the deep trauma that was so often left out of official slave narratives. It also teaches us to question the authority of any single official story. And maybe most importantly, it clears a path for powerful new counter-narratives to be born. And this is not just one or two books we're talking about. The genre is full of incredible works, like Tim O'Brien's The Things They Carried, which completely messes with the idea of truth in war, or Jean Rhys's Wide Sargasso Sea, giving a voice to the so-called mad woman in the attic from Jane Eyre. And you've got E.L. Doctorow's Ragtime, which brilliantly mixes fictional characters with real historical figures. So, when you boil it all down, what's the big takeaway here? It's this profound and really powerful idea. For people whose stories were deliberately ignored, silenced, or flat out erased, fiction can be a way to build that history back. It can tell a story that feels truer than the facts ever could. And that really leaves us with a question to take with us. When we look at the world, when we read the history we've all been taught, we have to stop and ask ourselves, whose story have we not yet heard?